Welcome to this session of Belfast in Conversation, organized by Imagination NI. Thanks to Sanjay Ghosh for initiating and conceptualizing this series. I'm Sandya Tirupathi, a doctor by profession, and I'm also a people's enthusiast and enjoy talking to varied people and like to know what keeps them alive and what makes them tick. On this occasion of Gandhi Jayanti, the 151st birth anniversary, I would like to recall what Einstein once said. He said that generations to come, it maybe would scarcely believe that such a one as this, ever in flesh and blood, walked upon this earth. Yes, he was alluding to Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, very well known to the world as Mahatma Gandhi. It is believed that Gandhi was an inspiration to Einstein in his later life. Gandhi was an inspiration to a lot of world leaders, including Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and spiritual leaders like Dalai Lama, and to lots of millions of people all over the world, including me. Today, we have two very interesting guests with us. We have Mr. Tushar Arun Gandhi, who is the founder president of Mahatma Gandhi Foundation, author of a book titled Let's Kill Gandhi, and has dedicated much of his life to the legacy of his great-grandfather, Mahatma Gandhi.
Namaskar.
Very welcome. We also have Mr. Nitin, an engineer by profession and a Gandhian by choice, and who has embarked on this epic journey, traveling around the world and spreading Gandhian philosophy and peace messages and inspiring thousands as he does that. Very welcome, Nitin.
Thank you.
Common to our two guests is the desire to keep Gandhian values alive. Many, many thanks for accepting our invitation, and a warm welcome to our amateur series Belfast in Conversation, and the topic for today is keeping Gandhian values alive. Tusharji, I'm going to start with you. Could you please tell us what kind of work do you do to keep the legacy going?
Sandhya, the thing I do is, although I also work with a lot of institutions that are associated with Bapu and his philosophy and ideology, I also, in my personal, at my personal level, try to make the philosophy and the ideology more relevant to today's time, and interpret it so that it can be seen to be utilitarian even today in helping us come to terms with the issues that modern age and modern life is posing to us. So I like to be known as the interpreter of the Gandhian ideology. So in my speeches and my writings and my dialogues, I like to contemporize the ideology, because I believe that the ideology that Bapu practiced was an eternal living ideology. It wasn't a kind of a stagnant philosophy of life. It was ever evolving during his lifetime also. And that is where Bapu had the courage to say that if he expressed divergent views on some issue, then people should believe that what he said towards a later part of his life was what he believed in, because his experience taught him that what he believed in initially was wrong.
Correct.
And that is what is the relevance of Gandhi today, that Gandhi did not, the person was murdered in 1948, but the ideology did not come to a halt in 1948. It has remained relevant throughout, and that relevance has to be told and reintroduced to people, and that's what I do.
That's true. He says something like, I grow from truth to truth, isn't it? And
Yes.
It's the persistence of a single idea, which is important. It's learning new concepts about a new idea.
So,
yeah.
I believe that Gandhian ideology is not a dogma. It's a living ideology which evolves continuously with time and with experience.
Very good. Nitin, you've no such connection to Gandhiji, and tell us what inspired you to take up Gandhian philosophy and what do you do to keep that going?
So, you know, when I become engineer, I worked 6 months in telecom, and then I feel that this is what my life is about. So I quit my job and start working with Maharashtra Gandhi Smarak, and that's where I get more connection with Gandhian principles and ideas and the 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 contemporary times, like the problems that was happening at the time of India. So I work especially in two different problems in India. One is the casteism, and the other one was the communal harmony. So these two are very important issues in today's India's biggest problem, I feel. So I work 1.5 years in these two, and in that two issues, Gandhi did so much work, and there is a lot of learning for us, so we can fight against the system. So after the working 1.5 years, I decided to travel across the world to celebrate 150 years of Mahatma Gandhi. And there are so many different ideas to start the journey. So that's how, that was my first connection, which was more like social justice and equality. That's how I connected with the Gandhian principles. And after traveling like 3.5 years, now I got a spiritual connection as well. So I think so. I found more connection with the spiritual one, especially the idea of non-violence, and I have amazing experience with this principle. While walking in Japan, South Korea, I have some practical examples and experience that teach me the real idea of non-violence and how we can implement it and achieve the peace and justice through it. So I think so. These are very important thing, and the most important for human being, the stories. Like we human being understand stories, and the Gandhi story is one of the I think so brilliant in human history, and it's relevant and going to be. If human make a mistake, it's going to be relevant. The most important is like we in this world we have a lot of injustice, inequalities, and a lot of civil wars in a lot of countries, and it comes with the idea of violence, and it comes with the idea of inequality. So the Gandhi's ideas are very much relevant if we have problem of inequality, injustice, and the civil wars. So until we reach at some stage of human civilization where we achieve absolute peace, maybe not, they're not going to be absolute peace, but some kind of peace in the society, then Gandhi will be irrelevant. So until that point, we must keep telling the story of nonviolence, how brave he was, and how he achieved the independence of India, independence through a nonviolence. So I think so that's most important for me, and that's what I'm preaching across the world, especially the younger generations in school and college, and enjoying time with them while speaking this idea of nonviolence. So, yeah.
For Bapuji, the turning point was on the platform when he was thrown out of a train all those years ago in South Africa. He had the first class ticket and he didn't budge to move to the second class because Indians were not allowed in the first class. Nitin, did you get to see that platform when you were in South Africa?
Oh yeah, that was like one of the most amazing moment in my journey in South Africa. So we was like 7 people walk from Johannesburg to Durban to Eastern Cape, Moezo. That's the birthplace of Nelson Mandela. So we was following the footsteps of Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi on 100th birth anniversary of Nelson Mandela and 150 years of Mahatma Gandhi. So along this journey, we follow the footsteps of Gandhiji, and there was one cell where Gandhiji was in prison, a small prison. So I spent one night there. But one of the inspiring one was Pietermaritzburg train station. Now in the Pietermaritzburg train station, there is a waiting room where Gandhiji become like Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi tried to become in the way to become Mahatma Gandhi. So I got opportunity to stay in that waiting room. It's become a museum now.
Oh, really?
And I slept for a night, and I couldn't sleep for a night. There was so much energy, and I always going to remember that amazing moment in this journey.
Tusharji, being the great grandson has its own effect, and I'm sure the legacy precedes you in whatever you do. Do you feel that you have to live in the shadow of this Mahatma all your life? And do you feel, what was that point in your life that made you feel that you have to carry on his legacy or work on his ideology? Was there a turning point as well, or was this an obligation?
Sandhya, before I answer your question, I want to make a comment. I do not agree with what you said that I carry the legacy or I am the direct descendant of Mahatma. I am only the biological
Yes.
descendant of Mahatma. I believe that everyone who believes in truth, peace, and nonviolence inherits the mantle of a descendant, because biological descendants are just an accident of birth. Ideological descendants are much more important, and we all are ideological descendants. Nitin is as much a descendant of Gandhi as I can claim to be, and with his actions, he becomes even more relevant a descendant of Gandhi than I ever can be, because I have just basked in the inheritance that I have got. The legacy is very heavy, the shadow is very big, large, and I know that I will never be able to move out of that shadow. And so I have always learned to cherish that shadow. I have seen it as a protective umbrella that shields me from a lot of things, and so I've never felt constrained or smothered by that shadow. And I have always lived with the knowledge that no matter what I do, my most popular identity is going to be that of the great grandson of the Mahatma, and I cannot avoid it. So I have never bothered about that. I have also not bothered to live a life according to the expectations of people. People expect me to be a certain way and things. And Nitin has met me. I'm sure he must have been, when he first saw me, he must have been shocked at realizing that I was the descendant of Gandhi, because everybody hopes that they will see something of Gandhi in me. And you can see that in my appearance, there is nothing like similar to Bapu also. So I haven't bothered to live according to the expectations of people. I've always told people that I am just a descendant of a great person. They should not expect any greatness from me, to be natural in my being. So, yeah, I have been very comfortable with my ideology, and I have always tried to live to that ideology to the best of my abilities. I know my shortcomings, I know my shortfalls, and I have never tried to pretend that I don't have weaknesses. या मुझ में कमजोरी नहीं है, ऐसा नहीं है. I have been very comfortable and honest about that, and I think that has helped me live in a much better manner, rather than if I was pretending to be someone that I wasn't, then this legacy that I have inherited might have become too heavy for me to live under. So that has never happened, and I've been very comfortable with my legacy. I have a Pietermaritzburg experience myself. I had gone, we were traveling in South Africa with a group of Americans and my father. And on that trip, we decided that we would take a train from Durban to Pietermaritzburg and arrive at the Pietermaritzburg station to get a feeling of what Bapu must have gone through. And being a bit of a irrelevant and a bit of a funny person, at least I like to believe that I have a sense of humor and I'm funny. So I offered the Americans, I said, when we arrive at Pietermaritzburg station, if you pay me $50 each, I'll push you out of the train so that you can experience what Gandhi experienced. Because we were going to arrive on the same platform as on which Bapu had been thrown out of the train. And I said, if some of you want to throw me out of the train, I'll be very obliged also. Thankfully, nobody took me up on my offer. Neither did they throw me out of the train, nor did they pay me to throw them out of the train. But I must admit that it was a very emotional experience arriving at Pietermaritzburg station, getting off the train and realizing that we had stepped onto the platform where Barrister Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi had been thrown out of the train, and where he sat for a long time pondering whether he should accept this injustice or feel insulted and leave this place or fight against the injustice. And where he sat pondering that question for the whole night, we also spent some time in the room. At that time, that room had still not been converted into a museum. It was converted into the museum when they celebrated the centenary of the incident in Pietermaritzburg. And so it was still a waiting room. And we went and sat over there and sort of tried to feel the aura of that incident. And I sort of felt, I sort of felt the kind of turmoil that Bapu must have gone through sitting on that platform that day, and coming to the realization that it was his responsibility to do something against this injustice, because too many people had experienced this injustice and had accepted it and were living with it. And so he decided that no, if I feel that this is unjust, then it is a responsibility for me to fight against it and see that it is bettered, it is stopped, it is prevented, so that others don't have to face this. And I think that was the realization that started him off on that journey. And for me, spiritually, that room in the Pietermaritzburg station signified the beginning of that transformation. So it was also a spiritual experience for me.
It's a really fantastic experiences, I'm sure, and I'm hoping that I'll get there one day to have that connection too. Nitin, coming back to you, you've traveled the whole world and you enjoy traveling, and you've actually taken traveling to another league. Apparently, Gandhi walked on an average about 18 kilometers a day, and this he did for about 40 years. He's supposedly have walked about 79,000 kilometers. This is equivalent to walking the earth twice. And I think his walking began in London when he wanted to be frugal about his money, and he makes it a habit walking up and down from his workplace. And walking is such a simple exercise, and he was rigid about walking and such obsessed about walking all his life, and he did that as a ritual every single day. Nitin, why did you choose walking and cycling?
So at the beginning, I joined this journey with one of my friends from Borga. So they decided to start on bicycle, so I joined with them by bicycle. But when I reached to Japan, and I decided to walk to reach Hiroshima and Nagasaki by walk from Tokyo. That was my first walk. And I think so that teach me a lot of lessons, like in my first month. Because on bicycle, what happened? Once you in motion, you don't feel to stop, like if you want to meet someone or anything. So you don't want to lose emotion. But while walking, you can stop, walk, talk, you can do many things. So I think so that was one of the key walking. Walking connect you like so many people across the world, especially with the nature. You see like so many amazing creatures of this beautiful world. Like the plants has different amazing architectures and flowers, and the small billions of insects and animals, they are on the way, but we never see them. But while walking, you can observe them and realize the life on this planet. And the other thing is, walking is kind of meditation. Once you walk, you reduce like a lot of negativity from your body. You get a lot of positivity once you start walking. I think so. That's I think so key in Gandhi's life. And if you see the Jesus Christ, he was shepherd. He used to walk a lot. If you see the life of Buddha, he used to walk a lot. If you see the life of Mahavir Jaina, he used to walk a lot. So the walking, I think, is one of the key to connect you to everything, and you connect within yourself. So I think so. One of the beautiful thing of walking, and the outside also is connected to people, and people feel like you once you start walking, it's actually non-violent action. If you see someone going in a park, I feel it's violent because once you're in a car, you go fast, and sometimes you don't respectful with everything. But while walking, people feel really peaceful, and they invite you. Like here in Turkey, I'm walking right now, and last 3 days, I never eat a lunch in my cooking style. Every day people said, come, let's have lunch with us. And last 3 days, I'm just eating with people. And it's been every day, like people invite me, stop me, are you crazy? Why walking? So I think so. This is also key for me. Like people asking me, why you're walking? So why you are so crazy about this? So that's I get opportunity to share my ideas with. They said about I'm celebrating life of Gandhi. Then I show my banner. They see the banner. Sometimes people thought I'm selling something. In Africa, we was walking with a Buddhist monk, and he used to beat a drum, and I was with the banner, and we got our big backpacks. So people thought we are selling something on the road. So people on like 100 meter, 200 meter, they stop. Where are you going? Why are you selling something? So we said we are selling the idea of non-violence and the story of Mahatma Gandhi across the world. And I think so. This makes amazing feeling. Like it's connect you so many things. So and you reach everywhere on this planet. There is no place where you cannot reach. You can go everywhere and meet everyone. So that's why I feel like walking is such a great thing. Even if you know the Salt March, it was so amazing transformation. One of the amazing political political event that's happened and changed the Indian politics and the world away from that. So Salt March is also kind of walking. So walking it's amazing way to send your message, to realize yourself spiritually, and to connect with everything.
And as a doctor, I have to add that walking can cut your risk of cardiovascular events by a third, and improves your sleep, and improves the quality of your immunity, and improves the good chemicals in your brain, and etc., which I think Gandhi had realized years ago. And he would have been very happy with the modern marathons and the craze for walkathons and 10K and 5K walks, I'm sure. Tusharji, you had a stint with Dandi March as well. I mean, of course, Dandi March was one of the historic moments in the civil disobedience movement in 1930, and Bapuji walked approximately 386 kilometers over 24 days to protest against the British taxation on salt. You recreated a walk to commemorate the Dandi March in 2005, and was there one this year as well? And what were your experiences?
Well, in 2005, it was the 75th anniversary of the historic Dandi March. And the fact that a lot of things about the historic march were getting lost in history. The route was getting obliterated. People didn't remember the exact route. And the Dandi March was not only about Bapu walking. It was about the companions that he selected from his ashram who walked with him from Sabarmati ashram to Dandi. And post Gandhi, most of them were forgotten. Nobody remembered them. And I felt that it was a great injustice to those 80 brave marchers who walked with Bapu on that journey. And I felt that their memory had to be commemorated. So I picked on the 75th anniversary to do that. There was also a personal agenda behind it, because in the historic march, 3 generations of my ancestors walked on that march. Bapu was, of course, the leader. My grandfather, who was the second son of Bapu, Manilal, also came from South Africa and joined Bapu and was selected to be amongst the 80 who marched with him. And Harilal Gandhi, the eldest son's son, Kanti, was the youngest member of the troop who joined Bapu from Sabarmati Ashram to Dandi. And that was very challenging for me, because in my earlier life, and by nature, I am a very lazy person. I never liked to do any physical activity. People used to push me to do, but this was very challenging. I used to always remember my ancestors, and it used to be a very great challenge. I used to keep questioning myself whether I would be able to do that kind of journey. And many a times I planned that, and not being as brave as Nitin, I never implemented that, but I used to talk about wanting to do that. And then when the 75th anniversary was approaching, I said, this is an occasion that I can motivate myself to do this all over again. So I said, okay, let me try, let me do it for the 75th anniversary. And then I've always been a very ambitious person. So after thinking of doing it myself, I said, why not make it into an event and invite people to join me? And when I started talking about it, everybody told me, are you crazy? Who's going to have 26 days to come and walk with you and things? So I said, fine, I'll just tell people that I'm going to walk. If you want to join me, come and join me. And you don't have to walk the entire thing. I'm going to walk the entire thing, but you don't have to walk the entire journey. You can join me as much as you want and leave whenever you want. So I created a website. That was the age pre the social media, when the internet was becoming popular. So websites and emails were the thing of communication. So we created a website with a registry email saying register if you are interested. And then we forgot all about it. We kept it. I made an announcement, and about 8 months before the event, I made an announcement in the media and things. Then we all forgot about it. And then in November, we got a notice from the person who was hosting our website and email address. And they said, you have a lot of traffic on your website and you have a lot of mail in the mailbox. You are over capacity, so you have to get rid of it. So I told one of my people who was working on the technical thing, I said, look at what is in our mailbox. I'm sure it's all spam and junk, so get rid of it, throw it away. And that evening he came back to me and he says, sir, there are over 1,000 emails of people wanting to join your march from all over the world. And I said, what? Are you crazy? He said, no. I said, give it to me. So he printed all of them out and he brought it to me. And I was shocked. It was over 1,000 people who had said they wanted to walk with me from all over the world and were asking questions and things. And we hadn't bothered to respond to them. So from the next day, I said, oh my God, now this is serious. We need to do this. And so we started responding to the people, and everyone we responded to said, no, we are coming and joining you. And suddenly I realized that now I had to make provisions for 1,000 people to walk with me. And I realized that I only had 6 months left, so I had to make arrangements for everything. And so we started working like a war room. We started arranging, organizing things. I said, I have to organize food, I have to organize stay, I have to do everything from scratch. So we started contacting tenting contractors and said, we need tents. Then we realized we need bathrooms and toilets. So we started getting in touch with them. We started getting in touch with caterers to provide food to us and all that, and started budgeting for all these things. I think I had the blessings of Bapu in it, because without any experience of doing these kind of events, the event was a grand success. We didn't have a single mishap, and over 1,600 people walked with me from Sabarmati Ashram to Dandi all the 26 days of the event. And on any given day, people used to join in just for that day. The thousands of people would just join in from one village to the next with us and see us off. And in every village, the villagers would come and throw their houses open for us and give us hospitality and all that. I'm sure Nitin has far more fascinating stories of that. And for me, it was a spiritual experience, because knowing me, my friends and my family kept telling me from about the time I announced that I was going to do the salt march, they said, start practicing to walk. You don't walk at all. I was known to be sitting on the sofa the whole day, not doing anything. So they said, start practicing to walk. And I said, why should I bother? I'll walk when it is necessary. I'm not going to practice. So my friends and family started laying bets and how long I would last and in the Dandi March. And the maximum number of people said he won't last beyond the first half day. He'll walk the first length and then he'll stop and give up. Then he'll go by car. And the most generous of them said he'll walk the whole day, but the next day he'll stop. And believe me, you, that from the first day onwards, I wanted to give up. It was such a torture to walk. I was much heavier than fatter, rather unfit, and I didn't have the stamina or anything. And I used to cry. I was so tired and tortured. I used to cry. But something kept saying that, let's just start the journey today, then we'll stop. And that one step to start would make me walk to the destination. We used to walk in two stages, in the morning and then in the evening. So in the morning, I would say, okay, chalo, abhi chalna shuru kiya hai, so we'll go to the halt, and at the halt, I'll give up. And then when the time came to start from that halt, I'll say, okay, chalo, we'll start with everybody, then I'll give up. And then I'll say, abhi start kiya hai, so we'll go to the end of the day. And I actually reached Dandi, convincing myself that I'm just going to start and then stop and give up. And without realizing, every day became an individual event, and I finished at Dandi and I reached there. So that was a great personal realization for me. When I reached Dandi, the sole of my feet, both my feet and between my toes, was one big blister.
Oh my God.
It was sore, and it was a blister, and it was a torture. When finally 3 months later, the entire skin of my feet peeled off and new skin grew over there. So it was really torture, but it was also a spiritual awakening. I realized that physical strength did not matter at all. It was the moral strength that gave you the ability to do the task, because you had convinced yourself that you had to do that. And that moral and spiritual strength were far greater than any amount of muscles and things. In 2009, 2019, 2020, I again did it. We started from Sabarmati, and the aim was to reach Dandi. This time we were a much more modest group. We were about 10 people who walked. But we had to give it up after 5 days because the pandemic started, and India was going into a lockdown. So we halted there. But the determination is that when things normalize and everything is free again, I will finish that interrupted journey. And the idea is to now every year do an event on that route, because in 2030 we will celebrate the centenary of the Dandi March. So we want to create an event that will have a very big celebration in 2030, and by then we want to have a world-renowned event happening on that Dandi route.
That is an incredible story, Tusharji. It must have been a daunting experience. And again, your story is a message to the world in itself that nothing is impossible, really, isn't it?
Yes, if you decide, if you put your mind to it, and if you are honest to your belief, then it's not impossible.
Now, coming back to Gandhi's experiments, one of his experiments was with food. When he reached London, he was a vegetarian only because he was morally bound to his mom's promise. But he truly becomes a vegetarian once he joins the Vegetarian Society of London under the influence of Arnold Hills. And in fact, vegetarianism was his first political cause, and it was led by the conception of non-violence again. And again, if you look at his life, food and eating was connected in a big way to his political activism, salt satyagraha, the fast unto deaths. And in later life, I think he was a passionate food reformer who believed eating right was central to living right. So Nitin, you've, again, in your travels, how have you managed in the last 3 to 3.5 years? Tell us about your adventures with food, and how have you been promoting vegetarianism, or do you, or you don't?
Well, that's interesting, actually, very interesting question about food. So when I start my journey, so until age of 25, I was non-vegetarian. Even when I start my journey on bicycle, I was non-vegetarian. The idea behind that was came from Buddhism, because whatever people offer, you should accept. So that's why I just following and eating whatever people offer, like Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. And if you try to ask them question like, what is this food, it'll take like 30 minutes to understand with the Google Translator. So it was so difficult. But after walking in Japan for a month, I think so that was my first awakening for the nature and the animals and the plant. So I become vegetarian after a month, because what happened, like before the idea, before that time, my whole idea is about human civilization and peace within a human society. And as you know, Asia and India is like huge population, so whole our thought process go with human beings. And after that walk, it was so slow and so connecting with the nature. I realized that there is something more than human beings. So I quit my non-vegetarian practice and become vegetarian. It was not easy in Japan and anywhere in the world, but you always find something. Like afterward, like I got my Japanese mother. I walked with a Buddhist monk who was walking the same path. So she took care of me. She find a vegetarian diet for me every day. And then in USA as well was not easy. South America was one of the hard. Central and South America, every day has to eat rice, beans, and eggs. Rice, beans, and eggs. For 6 months, I was on the same diet. Nothing more than that. For breakfast, lunch, and dinner, same thing. Then Africa, well, I became a vegan. So I was like 4 months vegan. I practiced, and was not so easy. So a vegetarian was okay, but the vegan is one of the hardest while traveling. So I got some injury, and then I stopped vegan practice. And then other Africa, then I got something, and in Europe was not that difficult. Promoting vegetarianism is, I think, so one of the important idea in non-violence. So I do promote in my talks, and most of youths want to know about why you become vegetarian, and that's, I think, so one of the, if you go philosophically, it's very hard to convince people, but because the idea of non-violence is, it's not, you never reach absolute non-violence. There are going to be violence. Like if you breathing now, you're going to kill a lot of small microorganisms right now, or washing your hands, or so it is impossible practically. But the idea behind it is about how we can minimize this violence. And I think so that's the key of idea of vegetarianism and vegan. How we can minimize our keep your energy like very steady. So this is like two things I realized through my practice of non-violence with the diet.
Tusharji, Mahatma Gandhi gave us the world a very important weapon. I called it Satyagraha, holding on to truth, insistent of truth by non-violent activism. He actually said holding on to truth in a manner to sway your opponent by change of heart. In modern times, it sounds a bit naive, but do you think there's still a role for this in modern times?
I think so. If we want to bring about lasting change, then that can only happen if we are able to transform people. It's not going to happen by destroying the opponent or the opposing ideology. Nothing is achieved when you destroy, because you only end up creating a vacuum, and you end up creating more hatred towards it. So if you want to transform, then it has to be in a manner where you are able to convince the opponent that two things are very important in that. One is to make the opponent understand that they are not evil. It is what they are doing that is evil, or what their belief that is evil. But they have goodness within them. Bapu always appealed to the goodness in his opponents, and that's why he never referred to them as enemies ever. He always referred to them as friends, and always pleaded with them to change their ways and addressed the evil of the practice and not the evil of the person in his way. So I don't see any alternative to that if we want really to achieve change. We cannot achieve that change or make the world better. And that is where Bapu insisted that whenever you want to change something, that change has to happen within yourself first. Unless you yourself change and become that way, you're not going to be able to change the world. And that's why, I'll go back to your previous question that you addressed to Nitin. I am not that evolved as yet or enlightened as yet, and so I still am not a vegetarian. I've never been a vegetarian. I still enjoy my animal protein, if you have to say that. I know that it is not ideally a non-violent lifestyle, but I believe that if the transformation doesn't happen in me from within with an understanding and a conviction, then I would be dishonest in my practice if I were to practice or publicize vegetarianism and say that no, vegetarianism is very good, and then go and eat non-vegetarian. I had a very funny experience in my life when I was standing for elections in '98. I was standing on behalf of the Samajwadi Party in Mumbai. And the Samajwadi Party in Mumbai at that time was predominantly a party of Muslims of Mumbai. And the opponents used to call it the Muslim League also. And that was the period when I stood, my candidacy was announced for elections, was the period of Ramzan. So the whole community was celebrating Ramzan, and every evening there would be a iftar gathering. And so most of my campaign, you would be attending those iftars and things, and the media would also be there. When my party people realized that I relished all the biryanis and the salans and the kebabs and things, they panicked because they thought, they were very scared that if the media photographers saw me enjoying kebabs and biryanis, they would put photographs of that in the press, and that would act as a negative campaign against me because I was the great grandson of the Mahatma. So they used to actually have volunteers who would keep me away from the food when the food was served, and they would keep telling me, तुषार भाई अभी चिंता मत करो, अंदर रूम में तुम्हारे लिए खाना रखा है, वो बाद में खाएंगे, ये मीडिया वाले चले जाएंगे, उसके बाद खाएंगे. And I told them that I won't do that, because I'm not going to hide what is my normal practice, because then it will be dishonest and then it will be bad. So if I'm going to eat what I like, I'm going to do it in front of everybody, or else I won't eat it at all. So for that period, although it was very difficult for me to not enjoy the feast of the iftar, I actually remained a vegetarian during that time because I refused to eat the feast in secret, behind closed doors. I said, no, I will not do that. And once during that campaign, I remember we were, every day when the actual campaigning started, the work would go on till 1, 2 in the night. And there was no time for dinner or anything. So me and my friends would finish the day's work, and around 1:30 or so, we would go looking for some restaurant to have dinner in. And many a times it would happen that my opponent's supporters would also be looking for food at that time. And we ended up at the same restaurant. And then when they were sitting watching me eat, they would talk amongst themselves. Let's take a photograph of him eating non-vegetarian, we'll publish it. So after 2 or 3 days of that happening, I walked up to them and I said, why do you want to bother? I'll give you a photograph of me eating non-vegetarian. You can use it as much as you want, because I'm not going to deny it. If somebody questions me if I'm a non-vegetarian, I'm going to tell them I'm a non-vegetarian. So it doesn't matter to me. So they were very shocked. They thought, I would panic and I would run away from there. And I said, no, I am shameless about my habits. If I do it, I'll do it in public. Otherwise, I won't do it at all.
Yeah, it's about being true to oneself, isn't it? And honesty
One
is
of the
most
things
important.
is that, one of the two things is that, but having said that, I am admitting that it is only because I have not evolved to that understanding of non-violence that I still continue with the lifestyle that I lead.
Again, coming to saving the planet, which has taken a priority in modern times, some of his practices, some of Mahatma Gandhi's practices like minimalism, veganism, and being wearing friendly, environment friendly clothes like khadi are all very relevant to modern day. And do you think he would have tackled, how do you think he would have tackled the problem of global warming?
I think he had already realized that, and the example he set was by living a minimalistic lifestyle. You know, he reduced his requirements to a level which was much greater than just merely being sustainable. You know, today when we talk about ethical lifestyle, we say, "Look, we must have a sustainable lifestyle." But even in being that sustainability, we do not reduce our requirements to a level where what we consume of nature is so insignificant that it won't make a difference to the nature. Uh, uh, so that is the key to the Gandhian practice of lifestyle, reducing the necessities that we have sort of gotten into believing that that much is required. Gandhi led a lifestyle where nothing was required. He said, whatever is available within that, with the least consumption, I will lead my life. That takes a lot of courage. I don't know if we are all ready to do that, but if we were able to really do that, you know, reduce our consumption at every stage of life, you know, if every day I sustain myself by consuming less. And that doesn't mean just consuming less of food. It's all the natural resources that we consume and take for granted. If we start reducing that, then I think we will be able to sustain this life, because nature has still got the bounty to provide us with the necessities than at the moment how we are. So I believe that the key was more, the ethic was in the frugality of necessities. How less in his clothing, in his life, in his requirements, everything. Like Nitin, now, you know, his whole life is on his backpack.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, he said Earth provides enough to satisfy everybody's need and not everybody's greed, isn't it? And if we followed that to the detail, I'm sure we could tackle this global warming much better. Nitin, you talked about casteism and equal opportunities. One of Gandhi's ambition was not just of independence. He also wanted to fight against casteism and equality of opportunities and religious pluralism. How do you think, where do you think we are with this?
Oh, that's like, I worked like 1.5 years in this field, and I have a weird experience, and it's very, in India especially, it's very complicated, very complex. We human being, I think so, one of the important things for human being, we don't understand ourselves much better. That's, I think so, one of the difficulties in whole human history. We try to understand ourselves better, and spirituality is one of the way. And the question before you asked about environment and minimalism, it came from that. Like, our life is driven by our outside environment factor, all the outside stories that come to us, like the brandings of the things, the advertising we see in the television, and that's, even though we don't understand this, but subconsciously it goes in our mind. And while going to the shops, we make a decisions. So everything around us, it's happening because of the unconscious things going on in our mind, and it's coming up once we go and the place, or in particular situations come up, and we try to do the same things like what the world is doing. And that's, I think, so why the spiritual practice of Gandhi is very important, that to understand ourselves much better, to be more conscious. Once we become more conscious, we can take much, much better decisions. Like I'm traveling across the world last 3.5 years, and only what I have is like one backpack, sleeping bag, and tent, and faith in humanity. So that's all I got. And I never feel like I feel one of the richest person on this planet, because every day I'm staying on of the a beautiful land. Sometimes I stay in bungalows, sometimes staying one of the poorest person on this planet. So every day it's same for me. Like even it's like too high or too low, it's all same for me, because I see, and because of walking, I become more conscious, and it doesn't affect on my way of thinking. The other thing is Indian caste structure. Like as I was saying, I belong to untouchables in India, and there was a breakup because of I'm untouchable and my girlfriend was from higher caste. So we got a broke up. Like she said, like I cannot marry with you, and these things happen with me in my life. And I stay in a community with I stay in an area where like the caste is very, like in every towns in India, the casteism is still hold like very strong hold. In the cities it might be diluting, but in the small cities, small towns, it still exists and very strongly. So it influences a lot in every human being. It's like was in USA. I seen that very easily, because it's only two community, whites and black. There is another third class, which is Latin Americans and Asians. But two communities I see very easily: the whites and black, and their areas, their school structure, it's totally different. And it was so easy for me to teach them how is the casteism and the racism in USA. It was so easy. I explained the casteism, and they can understand what's happening in their own life. So for them it's easy to understand, but India is very hard because of these long stories. And the most important part for us, that we don't believe we don't understand the mathematics, we don't understand the science properly, because we believe in stories, and all our lives is guided by stories. So I don't know how we're going to stop the stories, how long it's going to be with the stories, when we're going to observe the reality. And once, I think so, each individual on this planet can observe the reality, it can be one of the amazing things happening with the human civilization, where we can reach with the peace, we can achieve the environment sustainability, like the climate change. We can fight with climate change very easily once you understand ourselves much better. And if we understand much better ourselves, we can understand the equality very easily. We can reduce the caste structure. And I think so technology is going to play a very important role on this century, 21st century. It's going to be amazing. What I see in Africa or in Asia, a small town, or in India, a small town, even the poor people got one smartphone, and the smartphone gives amazing power to them, especially with the knowledge, connecting with the world, and it's changing the idea. If you see the teenager across the world, teenager, they got similar stories because of that social media. Similar, it might be wrong, but if I see the point of equality and justice, it's very useful, because they have a similar thought processing going on in their mind across the world, and it can bring us all together. It will reduce this inequality and injustice, because my action is I'm not going to be rich, these billions of people on this planet, but this technology can reach all of them. So it has amazing potential, I think so. And I think so that's going to be a change maker in the century.
Game changer. What do you have to add to that, Tusharji? What do you think?
Well, I think if at all we are to admit, then the fight for equality was one of the biggest failures of Bapu. He fought all his life for equality, but was not successful in achieving that in our society. It was so deeply entrenched, the inequality and the hierarchy of caste, that even it defeated the efforts of Mahatma Gandhi, who worked against it for almost his entire adult life. And so I think that what is wrong, fundamentally wrong, is our cultural makeup. Our cultural makeup itself is based on the hierarchies of caste and the ideology of us and others. And that's why we cannot really become assimilated on a level playing field ever. And that is what we have seen for the past 70 years of independent India also. And if you look at the Indian diaspora in all around the world, one would have thought that when they went into Western societies which were free of hierarchies, they would abandon their hierarchies in those societies and become equal. But it hasn't happened. If you look at the Indian diaspora abroad, you will see that they are even more rigid in their isolation of their communities and their communal identities and things. And I have experienced more casteism abroad. I'll give you a small example of how it affected me in England on two occasions. On one occasion, I was at a function, and after the successful completion of the function, the organizing team, they had decided that they would, to go and relax, they would go to a pub and let off steam and relax. And since I was dependent on them to take me back to my lodgings, I said, I'll come along with you. I don't drink. So I said, I will not be able to join your party, but I'll definitely come along with you, and you can then drop me off after the party to my hotel. And that evening there was a young guest, and she would not be invited to her friends' birthday parties and things. And when she invited her friends to her home for a birthday party, they would always find excuses not to eat at her home. And she said, when I grew up a little bit more, some of my friends invited me to their birthday party, and as soon as I went to their birthday party, to their homes, an elder in the family would come and tell me, don't touch the food. And I would see all the other children going to the buffet table and helping themselves. But I was told not to touch the food. And then one of the elders in the family would serve the food in a paper plate to me and come and give it to me. And only now, when I've grown up, I realized that they didn't want an untouchable to pollute their food. So and they didn't want to wash the plates in which I had eaten. So I was given disposable cutlery and things. And she said, now my dilemma is that I am overqualified in my community. But she was a master's in law and a barrister and all that. He said, in my community, I can't find boys to get married to. And nobody else will marry me because I am from an untouchable community. And my life is at a dead end. I don't know what to do. And I was so shocked that this was in England in the year 2000. And I was shocked at the kind of discrimination that is going on. And I have seen that much more apparent in the expat Indian communities abroad. And I think that shows how deeply entrenched caste prejudices are within ourselves, that even when you are exposed to a culture where that is completely not there, we still don't change.
It is entrenched so deep that, again, as you said, the change has to come from within. Just because you move to a different land where those hierarchies are not so apparent, it's just not going to go away, isn't it? So we're going to finish off. And if there was one message that you would like to give in one sentence, what would that be, Nitin?
I think so. With all these difficulties and a lot of humanity, like crisis, civil wars, and untouchability, inequality, I think so we should not lose on hope on humanity. And that's what I think so one of the greatest messages of Mahatma Gandhi. Humanity is like an ocean. A few dirty drops cannot make the ocean dirty.
Tusharji, what would that message be from your side?
My message would be, don't worship anybody blindly. Understand that that icon as a human being and try to emulate. Even if you can't become exactly like that icon. If you adopt some poor parts of that icon, you will become a better human, and that will be a much honest and greater worship of that person. So my life has been to explain Gandhi the man and not the Mahatma.
Fantastic. That, on that note, I must say, Gandhi himself said, "My life is a message," and I think we have a lot to learn from his life. He has given us many practices to ponder, like nonviolence, minimalism, vegetarianism, religious pluralism, anti-casteism, and many more. And he has tried to be the change that he wanted to see in his world, and I hope we can all try to be the change that we want to see in our world. And thank you so much, Tusharji and Nitinji, for joining us today in Belfast in Conversation. And thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Sanjay.
Sandhya ji, and I wish all your listeners good wishes and peace.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay and Sanjay Bhai, for this great opportunity. Thank you.